When we are married, or when you think about getting married, if you're engaged, when you're married, all of us, and this is wrong, this is just a reality, all of us approach marriage or come toward marriage with a box full of desires, right? I mean, we have dreams and wishes, things that when we think about marriage, I imagine, we're going to live in a big old house, better than this house. I imagine, I just dream of the day we're going to have kids, we're going to have them like in the first year of marriage, or we're going to have them 5 years, we're going to wait a while. I imagine that there's certain roles my wife is going to fulfill because, my mom, I imagine that eventually, I'll have the freedom to drive one of these and we'll have enough money to where I can, basically drive what I want. And I imagine that my wife, like my mom, will there's certain things that she'll do. Let's see. And I imagine, I dream, I have a certain desire about how our marriage is going to be scheduled. We're going to spend all our time together. Or, my desire is that we'll spend some time together and then we'll have our own friends. Or that we're going to merge friends, or we'll never let our friends meet. But, there's this sort of dream. In your mind, you imagine, you have a desire, you have a wish, a dream about how your marriage is going to be scheduled and how you're going to split holidays. And I remember when Sandra and I had that conversation, we weren't quite on the same page, but we came into marriage with a vision of how the holidays would go. Men, you get married with a vision of, and a desire and a dream of what your wife won't wear to bed at night, right? And ladies, you just know that he'll love you for who you are, and it won't really matter. This kind of thing's secondary, and you can say, but it's so comfortable. He'll say, I just want you to be comfortable. I don't really care what you wear. We have certain desires financially that, when we get married, we'll start here, but eventually. And so we all come to marriage with all these desires. Now, you can't help that. I mean, that's just, how else would you know? But the thing that all these desires have in common is I. This is what I envision. This is what I imagine. This is what I desire. This is what I wish for. This is how I picture it. It's all about I. And I can't be faulted for that because I've never been married before. Or, maybe you have been married before, but, it was all her fault or his fault or most of it anyway, and time's gone by. And so you're kind of back to, in my next marriage, here's what I desire. In my next marriage, here's what I wish for. In my next marriage, here's what I imagine. And right in the middle of all of that is I. Because what else can I do but wish for what I would wish for? I can't exactly, build a dream, an imagination about marriage around what somebody else desires. That doesn't make any sense. And so we come to marriage with big capital I. All of us do. All of us do. And we walk down the aisle with a box full of desires. We have flowers, all the rest, but right there with us is, let's get through the vows and let's say I do, because I have some wishes and I have some dreams and I have some desires. And in our marriage, in fact, before we got married, we even talked about, who's doing what, where we're going to live, and what are our goals. We talked about this stuff. We got this picture. And then we get married. And either at the altar or on the honeymoon or a week or a month or, that first year, we begin to do something subconsciously that impacts the dynamic of the relationship. And this is what we're going to talk about for 3 weeks. Without really knowing why and understanding what's happening, we eventually began to take all of these, in many cases, legitimate desires. My dad always did that, and my mom always does that, and isn't that what a woman does, and isn't that what I can expect from my husband? And we begin to place all of these things, how we want our marriage to look financially, how things are going to be romantically, who's going to do what in the home, how much money there's going to be, how the whole thing's going to be scheduled. We transition these into a different category. And desires, good desires, become what? Expectations. Expectations. And we don't know when it happens, and we're not sure how it happens. And it may be, you may have walked down the aisle one way with these and walked out the back of the church with these. It may have happened instantly in your mind because, after all, you're my wife. You were my fiance. We could just dream. But now you're my wife. I expect. You were my fiance. We just wished together and talked about the future. But now you're my husband. After all, you're my husband. That's what husbands do, don't they? And somewhere along the way, wonderful, blissful wishes, dreams, desires become expectations. And when this transfer happens, the dynamic in the marriage is instantly changed. And it's changed primarily because there's not just one big I in the marriage, there are two big I's in the marriage. And everybody walks down the aisle with dreams and wishes, and that can't be helped. And once the big I's collide, there are just a few options. One option is you leave. You go, you know what? I'm not going to be able to measure up to your expectations. That's not what I expected. You don't seem to be managing my expectations. And so you decide, you know what? He just wasn't a good husband. She just wasn't a good wife. What does that mean? I had expectations about what a good husband, a good wife was supposed to be, and he wasn't one. She wasn't one. Or he expected so much of me and she expected so much of me and I couldn't meet up to their expectations, so we're just going to, I'm leaving. I'm out of here. And the problem is, of course, you know what you do? You just pick up your box of desires. So I'm going to go find me somebody else to dump these on. And it's the same thing. Guess why some of your second marriages feel a lot like your first marriage? Because guess what's there again? There you go. Wherever you are, there you go. We've talked about that. The other thing that we do sometimes is the stronger partner wins. You conquer. You go, ho, ho, ho. You will do what I expect you to do. And there's always a dominant partner generally in a marriage, and the weaker one cowers, and the dominant one finally explains and explains and explains to the point where your partner can finally understand what it means to be a good husband. And she finally understands what it means to be a good wife. And she begins, or he begins to live up to, or try to live up to your expectations. And as they begin to try to, reach that bar and jump higher and duck lower and spin faster, all of a sudden you start to feel like, hey, this is working out. This is a pretty good marriage. But what you don't understand is this, and this is huge insight. This may be the reason you're here today, just for this one little thought. You see, it's very easy for me to be me. None of you even wrote that down. It's very easy for me to be me. It is very easy for you to be you. Never once have you woken up in the morning, looked in the mirror and said, okay, remember, come on, be me, be me, be me. But it is very difficult for me to be Sandra. And it is very stressful for her to try to be me. And so when you win in those first few years of marriage and you finally explain for the 1,000th time, this is how a husband is supposed to be, this is how it's supposed to be scheduled, this is how we handle money, this is how we handle conflict, do you not? And finally, it's like, finally somebody decides, okay, I'll do it your way. You think things are great because being that way is effortless for you, because you're you. It takes no effort to be you. But when your spouse decides they're going to try to be you, it is extraordinarily stressful, but you don't know it because it comes natural to you to be you. But it's not natural for them to be you. So consequently, you think things are great, and for a while, things are great. Now, the flip side is you respond to all this by being the subdued, the conquered. You decide, I'm just going to conform. Okay. If that's what it takes to make you happy, if that's what it takes, to make you feel like we're having a good marriage, if that's the way your mother did it, if that's the way your daddy always did it, if this is what it's going to take for you to feel like we have the right kind of marriage, then big white flag, I surrender. And so you decide to conform. And maybe out of love, maybe out of duty, maybe out of you don't know why, just to keep her quiet or keep him quiet. Okay, don't keep threatening. I'll do what it takes. So you can conform. But see, conforming to become like somebody else expects you to be is extraordinarily stressful because you weren't made to be them. But you try. And here's my observation. Don't have anything to back it up, so just my observation. Late 30s, early 40s, that begins to break down. Emotionally, physically. People who have been in a marriage where they have just tried to, pull up to that bar and measure up, and the other partner thinks things are great, but you've been working to be somebody you're not. Eventually, emotionally, physically, that begins to unravel. And do you know what the problem is, whether you're conforming or the one that's being conformed? Because I is right there in the middle. You have an I marriage. The other option, and this is maybe the one that most people opt for, I don't know, it's just a compromise. Compromise says, okay, You do your part, I'll do my part. We'll split the bills, we'll split the time, Christmas there, Christmas here, Christmas there, Christmas there, here, you want it this way with the kids, I want it this way, we're just going to compromise with the money. You have your time, I have my time, you have your friends, I have my friends, you have your space, I have my space. We got it all worked out. And everything kind of goes good for a while. The problem with the compromise marriage is still an I marriage, because I will do what you've asked me to do if you'll do what I've asked you to do. That I will do my part if you will do your part, because I got to make sure I get enough of my part, for me to be happy. And it just takes the two big capital I's and plants them both right in the middle of the marriage. And it's still a big I marriage. And here's another insight. This may help explain a dynamic in your home. You see, the compromise marriage is still really a commitment to I. And here's how you know if you're in a compromised marriage. You say things like this, or you hear your partner say things like this, or maybe if you've been to counseling, I'm really concerned about my marriage. Honey, I'm concerned about the marriage. I'm really trying to save my marriage. That the focus of your attention and the focus of your passion, the focus of your concern, the focus of, your prayer request is not a person. It's the marriage. And people in a compromised marriage are very, very, very committed to the marriage. And that's not a biblical view of marriage. The great news is never in the Bible are we commanded to be committed to marriage. We're commanded to be committed to a person.